When has a false accusation ended up backfiring on the person who made it? When did a false accusation come back to haunt the person who made it? Well, let me tell you about something that happened to a buddy of mine named James. The whole mess ended up tearing a family apart, and the kid who kicked it all off pretty much wrecked his own future in the process. James was seeing this woman for close to a year, and things were going good. She had a son, 13 years old, and James made every effort to get along with him. At first, the kid seemed to like him just fine. They played video games together, went out for burgers now and then, all that normal stuff. But after a while, it was clear the boy was not too happy about sharing his mom. Guess he got used to being the center of attention, and James was messing up his perfect little setup. It started out small, little stuff. The kid would say James yelled at him or got mad over nothing. His mom was always there, though, and she knew it was not true because she had seen it with her own eyes. She would brush it off and tell James not to worry, kids make stuff up sometimes. But the boy would not let it go. Since the minor stuff did not stick, he upped his game and told his mom that James made him feel scared, like he was going to hurt him. Now, I have known James for over 2 decades, and let me tell you, the guy could not hurt a fly. Always smiling, the kind of man who would help a stranger push their car out of the snow without thinking twice. I have never once seen him lose his temper, not even when people pushed his buttons, let alone with a kid. James started losing sleep over it, trying to figure out why the boy would say things like that. Every time he talked to his girlfriend, she would just wave it off and say it was typical kid behavior, all imagination and exaggeration. She never sat her son down and explained what kind of trouble lying could bring, which, looking back, might have saved everyone a lot of pain. One weekend, the boy went to visit his dad's parents. James and his girlfriend had planned a nice day out, nothing fancy, just the kind of thing couples do. But before they could even leave the house, the police showed up and took James in. Turns out the boy had told his grandparents that James was hitting him. They did not waste any time and called the cops right away. James spent the whole night in a holding cell before they let him go, but it was far from over. He could not even go back to his girlfriend's place, so he stayed with me for a while. I went over to grab him some clothes and his work badge, but it was pointless. His job put him on suspension the second they heard about the accusation. You know, safeguarding policy and all that. When I stopped by the girlfriend's house, she was crying, swearing up and down that she knew James would never do anything like that. But she still had this attitude like, it is fine, the truth will come out. She thought the cops would see it was all a misunderstanding, because kids lie sometimes. I do not think she really understood how serious it was until it was too late. Later that night, James went to the store to grab some milk, and that is when the boy's dad showed up. To this day, I have no idea how that man found out James was staying at my place, but he did. And he beat James bad, broke his nose, busted his eye socket. James tried to talk to him, explain it was all a lie, but the guy was not listening. The girlfriend's parents were good people, and they always liked James. Something about the whole thing did not sit right with them, so they took the boy aside and asked him some questions. They were gentle about it, but they made it clear that the truth needed to come out. Eventually, the boy cracked. He admitted he made the whole thing up because he wanted James out of the picture. He hated sharing his mom, and he liked having all the control in the house. In his mind, James was ruining everything, so he figured if he told a big enough lie, he could get rid of him. The grandparents dragged the kid straight to the police station, where he confessed it was all made up. He even said James had never laid a hand on him, never yelled, never did anything at all. The officer who took his statement chewed him out good and told him they would not forget his name, in case they ran into him again down the road. Even though the truth came out, the damage was already done. The college James worked at decided they were better off letting him go, just to be safe. They paid him a settlement after he took them to court, but James begged them to let him teach again instead. Teaching was his life. They said no. So, even though he got some money out of it, his career was over. The students lost a great teacher, and the school lost someone who really cared. The boy's dad ended up getting kicked out of the military for attacking James, which is pretty ironic considering James was the one accused of being violent. The dad got a suspended sentence, and now he cannot find steady work. The girlfriend's parents were so disgusted with their grandson that they cut him out of their will. That hit him hard because they were loaded, and he was counting on that money to avoid ever having to work. They saw James for who he really was, a good, decent man who loved their daughter and her son like his own. The boy's other grandparents, the ones who called the cops in the first place, came to James later and apologized. They admitted they should have talked to their daughter first before jumping to conclusions. Their relationship with her is pretty much ruined now. She blames them for making everything worse, even though her own son started it all. They barely see their grandson anymore, and when they do, they cannot hide their disappointment. James, being the kind of guy he is, actually thought about trying to patch things up with his ex, but some things just break too much to ever put back together. Last I saw her, she looked miserable. She told me she had been on a few dates, but the second any guy hears about what happened, they run for the hills. Her name is poison now because of her son's lie. She loves her kid, but she hates what he did. And that is fair. James found some work as a private tutor and writes for a couple business magazines, so he is getting by. But you can see the sadness in his eyes. He still blames himself a little, thinking maybe if he had not shown so much affection to the mom when the boy was around, none of this would have happened. Nobody came out of it happy. All of it, because one jealous kid told a lie.